Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to our next episode of Maple Syrup History, number 255, and Catholicism and Disasters, number 21. As you already see from the title, today's lecture is on heat and molasses. I'm coming to you from the great outdoors, the PNW. We're always in the PNW, but usually at Vandal Catholic inside. And that's where we'll return for our next episode next week. But this week, as you know, we had a Wednesday class off and kind of an atypical, exceptional scenario in that I began a lecture on Monday on Chernobyl. And normally we would finish that part two when we do a part two whole week long series. We'd finish that on Wednesday. But this week I had travel obligations, and so had to push back part two of Chernobyl on Monday. I'm recording this on Friday, November 3rd. Also exceptional. Most of our maple syrup classes are Monday and Wednesday. It's how it's always been, and most likely will continue to be. A quick FYI, kind of housekeeping stuff. Number one, I'm going to be reading off my phone today. I normally prefer to have a hard copy print of my lecture, but my printer is broken. It's like mad broken, like awful broken, like epic fail. Where even like it eats the paper and then you start jamming it out and nothing works. So if some of you are like, I want something to pair with the outdoor motif. You have this, kind of like near sunset, pastoral, forested, wooded scene behind you. And I would want something kind of like tech heavy, because that's so not tech, then that's fine. If you don't like that, sorry. I prefer to have notes myself, but I'll be kind of going off. I have my whole lecture on my phone. That's kind of point number one. Way more important, before we dive into that, I feel like such a gross YouTuber, but I guess I am one. A lot of people have been watching the channel now for maple syrup history for one reason above all, and I'm really grateful to those people that are new to the channel and that have like reached out and been like, "Oh, this is awesome. I'm glad I can see these episodes." The number one reason why they've been doing this, I think, is that our class is at a very inconvenient time if you're not a student. I mean, that's just duh, right? Most people who are not students have 9 to 5 jobs. Our class is 12:07 until 1:37 p.m. on Mondays, on Mondays and Wednesdays. And I actually had a very close friend, a really awesome guy, recently come on his lunch break for our class, which of course was just, incredibly touching. Truly, it was awesome. It was like, wow, like you could do anything you want on your lunch break and you're coming to spend it with maple syrup history. That's pretty awesome. But the vast majority of people, are not able to come to the in-person classes. Please understand, you're always welcome to come to the in-person stuff and or follow along on Zoom. We live stream the classes. But there's been kind of an uptake in some ways of people saying, "Hey, thank you." Like it's awesome that, I guess this is a silver lining, even if you hate social media and hate tech. Thank you for posting these lectures to the channel later on. Why did I say before I feel like a gross YouTuber? Because I'm going to say, oh, make sure to subscribe. Make sure to subscribe and hit the bell to get notifications. That's disgusting. I feel gross saying. I feel like I have to go like bathe in a river right now to wash off all the kind of nasty self-promotion that I just did. At the same time, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that bell, because every time I post a new episode, you'll be aware of that. Especially if you're like a lot of these people that are reaching out to me and say, "I'd love to come in person. I can't come in person. I have a job 9 to 5, but I love watching the stuff online later on." In fact, your thing is not a podcast, but I just go on YouTube and I connect my phone to the Bluetooth in the car and I listen to it. And that obviously, like, that's truly, I can't even make a sarcastic joke about that. People that will listen and watch our maple syrup stuff later on is awesome. Thank you so much for that. What is forthcoming? Well, today is kind of like, I would say, a kind of connector lecture, because I'm going to post the full Chernobyl series. It's going to be 2 classes, but it's going to be 2 hours long on the actual YouTube video, or 2.5 hours. We recently had an episode 13 and 14 of Catholicism and Disasters. that on the First World War and the Spanish flu and talked about Fatima. And we posted that in like 2 hours and 20-minute format. That is what's going to happen with the Chernobyl lecture when I finish it on Monday. Remember, of course, you can come live and watch it Monday in the classroom, but I'll have it on YouTube for people that like that later on. But I really want to sell, before I get into today's lecture, I really want to sell and beg you, like, listen, get pumped, get excited for our 9/11 lecture. This whole semester, for anyone new, maple syrup history is an umbrella term for just kind of the classes Vandal Catholic intellect does. We've had a logic class in the past, Civil War, a lot of different themes, but the class specifically to this semester has been Catholicism and disasters. And what I always do is, I joked once, it should be called Disasters in Catholicism, because we talk about the disasters first, and then Catholic reactions to them. Started with the Black Plague. You can go on the channel and look at the playlist and you see all of them in order. Started with the Black Plague. Our most recent one before today is on the Challenger space shuttle disaster of 86. We've had Hindenburg, Titanic, all that kind of stuff. The 9/11 lecture is going to be, I really think, honestly, amazing. Much better than today's class. And all apologies to how the class ends. Thanks to our wonderful staff. They've posted the whole syllabus. You can see the course. All apologies to Hurricane Katrina and Catholicism and COVID, which are our last two classes in early December. The best class of Catholicism and disasters is going to be that 3-part series on 9/11. It begins on this Wednesday, this upcoming Wednesday, which is November 8th. That's class number 1. And then it'll continue through the next week, the Monday and Wednesday of the following week. So people that watch online, there's not going to be a new video posted for a long time. So I'll format that and put it together, but it'll probably be 4 hours long. And before you think, oh, that's so long, that's super, super long. I think that's the strength of our channel, in that people are, have videos that are like soundbite stuff and cool interviews, but they're like 9 minutes long. And that's awesome. That is incredible. Thank God for truly a lot of really good Catholic options, social media options, YouTube options. I think it's fun though to actually sit with a topic. And right now, our channel is ridiculously small, terribly small. I am thrilled. I am over the moon when the recent Challenger episode gets 300 views, or the one on the First World War is like 600 views. I think I saw recently, which is awesome, right? We do not have 600 people in the class. In the class, sometimes you only have 4 people that can show up. Sometimes, I think the height that I had, the record for in-person attendance was like 22 for a Civil War class. But sometimes it's 8 people. Last class for Chernobyl Part 1, I think there's 8 total. So that was very nice. But I mean, in the larger scheme of Catholic channels, 300 views per video, it's still very, very small. It's minuscule, fine. But even if the channel ever were to expand and people thought, oh, this is cool, this is awesome, I always want it to be like this informal and this accessible. Like there's no paywall, there's no kind of nonsense. I guess I'm going to be a gross YouTuber forever and be like and subscribe, make sure to hit that like button. But otherwise, no other hoops. It's just, look, this kind of, I think, high level undergrad or grad level content, unknown stuff, like in the Hiroshima Nagasaki episode, a lot about the Hiroshima 8, the Franciscan convent founded by Maximilian Kolbe, St. Maximilian Kolbe of Auschwitz fame, right? And I think it's just great stuff. So the fact that the 9/11 thing's gonna be 4 hours long, I think is a positive. Okay, so without further ado, welcome, and let's get started with our topic for today. So the title of our lecture today, once more, it's Maple Syrup History Overall Umbrella, episode number 255, Catholicism and Disasters in Specificity, number 21, Heat and Molasses. So I'm going to talk about some heat wave events in America and finish, as always, with Catholic reactions, where it fits in, as I mentioned in the introduction just a couple minutes ago. We've covered stuff like the Black Plague. We're going to cover 9/11, but it's not just epidemiological, COVID at the end, or terrorist attacks, or nuclear failures like Chernobyl. We've also talked about the eruption of Mount St. Helens and the Galveston hurricane, the natural disasters, right? Hurricane Katrina will bookend. It's one of our kind of last final lectures. Today, we're talking about the phenomenon of heat, how that leads to disastrous circumstances, and what Catholics have done or said about it. As always, the point of this class is to bring awareness to these things for the purpose of historical inquisitiveness intrinsically, like just because it's interesting, right? I just want to learn about it. Oh, okay, great. At the same time, as Catholics, we can be like, oh, I didn't realize, X amount of people died during this thing. I might say a prayer for their souls. Tri-state tornado 1925 was a previous episode, wiped out an entire town, entire towns in Illinois. I'm going to pray for those people. They might be in purgatory. They might need my help. So kind of good stuff all around. The information itself, but also kind of a spur to keep these people in mind, honor their memory in a certain sense, right? All right. So first thing I'm going to talk about are the 1980 heat waves. The heat waves, specifically related to the year 1980, not the whole decade, but the year of 1980. We'll double back with a quick point on 1913 and then talk about Chicago 1995 before getting into the reactions. So the 1980 United States heat wave was a period of intense heat and drought. Wreaks havoc throughout a large portion of what we would call today Tornado Alley, kind of the Midwestern part of the country. There is a kind of piggyback effect with this 1980 heat wave, that it's not just the effects of the heat itself, but also that it's colligated to drought, or kind of uses drought as a springboard. And it becomes a vicious cycle, right? And because of the heat and because of the lack of rainfall, not only is the ground heating up and not getting any kind of relief because of lack of the rain, the heat itself is exacerbating the problems with the drought in the first place. It becomes a very vicious cycle. Agricultural damage reaches at that time $20 billion. Today, in today's money, it'd be closer to about 70, 71, 73, depending upon your conversion algorithm, but around $70 billion of damage. I've said so many times that the number one problem in Catholicism and disasters, the number one heart-wrenching thing, of course, is the human toll. Nothing compares to human lives lost, right? I mean, with reason, Christ says, love God above all and your neighbor as yourself. This is the law and the prophets. On the tarmac at DFW, Dallas-Fort Worth airport, is still a record high all these years later. We hear a lot about climate change, kind of undulating patterns. Maybe you're a partisan of Greta Thunberg and the more alarmist school of climate change. Like, we have 10 minutes for dead. Maybe you're on that climate alarmist thing, or maybe you're kind of a climate, denier, right? And you're like, oh, climate change is a hoax. These people are all bad guys. Everything is a lie. I have no comment. I always said my job, I think, in this role of this class is simply to present the information to you. I don't want to influence you unduly in any other way. I simply want to lead you horses to water, and then you decide what you want to drink. I don't know. I don't know if this is so indicative of like, yeah, Greta and those people in Al Gore, right? They're right. Everything's screwed. We're done. Climate change is killing us all, and we should be super, super, super crazy. Number one issue above all concerned. Or whether it's simply just it gets hot at times, especially in Texas during the summer. This, though, I will say, is certainly exceptional. This 1980 heat wave, in its drought, in its economic damage, and just the sheer impact, the heat index impact, is very, very exceptional. And this recorded temperature of 113 degrees remains to this day still a high at the airport. Please note a final thing, final kind of introductory point, that almost 50% of American homes at this time in 1980 are without air conditioning. Itself, a lot of energy itself is not, concerning, right? That's gonna impact the ability of American men and women to persevere through, to make it through this awful heat wave. In Kansas City, Missouri, the high temperature was below 9 kindly much for tuning in as you do. That's over 38 degrees Celsius for 17 days in a row, more than half a month. Kansas City, Missouri. In Memphis, Tennessee, the temperature reaches once more these record-setting temperatures, an all-time high of 108 degrees Fahrenheit on July 13th, which is part of a 15-day stretch above 38 degrees Celsius or 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And Dallas Fort Worth, as I mentioned previously, where you have 113 degrees on the tarmac itself, you have 69 days within a period of kind of late spring, late May, moving into June until August, where the temperature is once more over 100 degrees. And then if you'll permit me a baseball analogy, we just finished the World Series, right? Any pitcher who's throwing 100 miles an hour has an outstanding fastball, world-class, exceptional arm to be able to pitch, forget 100, high 90s. And there's a lot of correlations between Fahrenheit and miles per hour, I would say. 95 is extraordinarily hot. That is a very good fastball. 100 degrees speaks for itself. 100 degrees is epically, exceptionally hot. And 100 mile an hour fastball is just fantastic, gold standard. But what does it mean when a guy comes in, like a St. Louis Cardinals pitcher named Jordan Hicks did, or another pitcher named Aroldis Chapman, who actually, congratulations to him, he's part of the Texas Rangers World Series team this year. What happens when these guys come in and throw 105 miles an hour? Well, it's exactly what you think. Standing ovations, kind of mouth open. Wow, I can't believe that's real. Is that real? So it's not enough just to say 69 days in Texas over 100 degrees, over 100 miles an hour. That's impressive. You have 29 days where the temperature exceeds 105. 105 miles an hour to 100 miles an hour is a large difference, is a noticeable difference, despite 100 miles an hour being just unbelievable. 100 degrees, despite it being super crazy, yes, checkmark hot, 105 all the more. This is what's going on in the summer of 1980. Remember, by today's money, it would be close to $70 billion of damage. $70 billion of damage. It also spawns other kind of climatological problems, like the Western Wisconsin derecho, the severe weather system kind of breaking out of this, that materializes in several Wisconsin counties mid-July, July 15th, 1980, causes just by itself, this storm, what today would be $852.41 million of damage. Just this one storm breaking off this large drought event throughout the Midwest causes in itself 0.8 of $1 billion of damage today. 3 people, may God rest their soul, die just by the storm system. It's referred to today simply as the storm, this July 15th storm. This maple syrup history episode is not on the storm. It's not on the Western Wisconsin derecho. That might be something that's more appropriate for a short, I don't know, kind of a small clip, kind of what I was saying earlier before when I said I like the long form nature of our channel, that we get into the details. And today is nothing details wise, right? Go watch the First World War lecture that's 2.5 hours long, or the upcoming 4-hour 9/11 thing. That's going to be crazy detail. This is not even that much detail today. And yet, just this one small snippet that you could talk about perhaps for 5 minutes causes 0.8 of $1 billion of damage. The storm, once it leaves Wisconsin, devastates approximately 4,800 square miles. And if you're like, what do you mean devastates? Well, you have wind speeds emerging out of this that are already classifiable. Remember, we talked about during the tri-state tornado that the large one in 1925 was an F5, had wind speed in excess of 300 miles an hour. By the way, if you want a good tornado channel, this guy is not associated with us in any way, because as I said before, our channel is so small we're not associated with anybody. So, but this is not some kind of shameless promo. Oh, like go check out my boy John. Like he has a channel. This guy, Pecos Hank, he has a fantastic. He's a storm chaser. Pecos Hank YouTube. He has a channel where he goes and he films himself, or really films the tornadoes. Films himself, kind of on the playing field, if you will, going after these storms, and he'll break it down what's happening in the meteorology and all that. When we talked about our tornado lecture specifically, the tri-state tornadoes of 25, we said there are some funnel clouds that reach up to 300 miles an hour, and this is horrifyingly F5 level devastating. Here it's only 110 miles an hour, but anyone who's ever been outside right now outside in this beautiful weather, there's 0 miles per hour wind speed. Right? There's nothing. This plant right behind me here would be moving at 2 miles an hour, noticeably, right? It's kind of just gently swaying with the half mile per hour wind speed that is currently outside. There's no wind. Anyone who's been outside and even 20, 30 mile an hour conditions, gusts, knows it can get pretty intense. So 110 miles per hour is certainly very, very serious, despite not being at 5. Storm damage just in Minnesota. As it exits Wisconsin, remember it's 4,800 square miles, approaches $43 million. Up to 97%, guys, 97% of northern states' power customers out here in Pullman, Moscow, Avista is the popular, or one of them certainly. It's the company I have, the electrical power company. Northern states' power customers were left without power after 7 days, after a week of the drought, heat, plus storm, 100-degree temperatures, plus the F1, F2, 110 mile an hour funnel cloud derecho storm system. People are without power for a week after that. And if you want a final kind of like underline thing, here's some property damage just in $1980. Remember, I said, talking about this entire thing, going back to the top of the lecture, right? And saying that this entire heat wave of 1980 plus drought causes $20 billion of damage then, which is 71 billion in today's money. That's a ratio of 3.5. So anyone who's very, very mathematically inclined, please multiply everything I'm telling you by 3.5. So for instance, total damage was initially estimated at nearly 160 million. Just from this storm, this derecho, not the whole heat wave thing, that's 20 billion. Just this July 15th derecho, 160 million times 3.5, right? Times 3 would be 48, and times 4 would be 64. So what, 56, I guess, is 3.5, right? $560 million. But once more, reading in $1980 of property damage out of just this one little thing that was part of the larger heat problem. Eau Claire County, $60 million. Dunn County, 38. Pierce, 29. Chippewa County, 10. Later calculations bring the number up by 80 to 240 million. So now times 3.5, you're now like 80 million, right? Around $80 million. Or excuse me, 240 million. You're at $800 million. Public facilities, highways, kind of the stuff that we pay taxes for, have damage upwards of $26.5 million, and private properties near $100 million of damage. So nothing to scoff at, and especially nothing to scoff at when you think that agricultural losses just in this one day, right, in Wisconsin, in Minnesota, these northern states, is over $104 million. Okay, done with 1980 for a second. But before I go to Chicago, I'm going to finish with Chicago. I promised I'd double back. There is a heat wave in 1913 in California that gives us the largest or the highest recorded temperature in, I think, world history to date that can be verified. Like Janine Clement is this French woman who we can verify lived to be 122 years old. She was born in 1875 and died in 1997. We know, like, we have the birth records. There are dudes who claim I'm 201 years old, right? Those guys also might be like, I'm probed by aliens. I built the pyramids along with aliens. P.S. I'm an alien. Like, we can't verify what these guys are saying, who claim to be 200 years old or 180. Oh, yeah, I know this guy. He lives in the Caucasus region near the Black Sea. He's 186, right? Can you prove it? How dare you? Just trust me. No, right? Janine Clement, we can prove, we know, was 122 years old, this super centenarian. And it's verified. So here's kind of the verified hottest temperature in world history at Furnace Creek, California, 134 degrees Fahrenheit or 56.67 degrees Celsius. Now, uh, the World Meteorological Organization says, quote, with global warming, such temperatures are becoming more and more likely to occur. I'm not going to tell you that I'm a global warming alarmist or I think it's a hoax. I'm not going to, I don't like putting my personal views, so to speak, into the streams and whatever. I just want to I want you to make up your mind. The only personal thing I'll agree to is I am a practicing Catholic. God have mercy on me. God help me. Obviously, obviously I am in my role as director of intellectual formation at St. Augustine Catholic Center. Duh. But I mean, I'm never going to kind of go on a rant that's on the left or the right or whatever these contentious issues. And perhaps I'm apolitical altogether. Maybe that's the kind of spoiler, is that, or the plot twist, that I really am kind of apolitical and whatever. What I would just say here, once more, to this quote: with global warming, such temperatures are becoming more and more likely to occur. You might say, dude, this is 1913. Bro, you guys, Al Gore, Greta, you're always like, look at the graph. Things went spike crazy, mad large in the 1970s. Smog in Los Angeles. Oh, global warming. But the hottest temperature ever is 1913. And they might say, well, okay, no, listen, shut up. No, because the Industrial Revolution's already in full swing. I mean, like, again, and I'm not a climate scientist. Do not take anything I say on climatology at all. Like, don't take it, just end the sentence awkwardly. Like, there's nothing to even finish that sentence. Just ignore me on climate. I'm not a climate scientist. I don't think I know better than these people. It's just interesting that it's like people are always talking about hotter years, hotter times, hotter whatever. The hottest the Earth has ever been so far to date, and it's a very localized, of course. This is why, again, I'm not making any kind of scientific point here. It's just one like almost anecdotal piece of scientific evidence. It's not anecdotal; it is science, but just one thing that in 1913 you have 100 and let me give you the exact again 134 degrees or 56 Celsius. It's just interesting. I don't want to build this narrative of, oh, see, it's just hotter every single year. People say our hottest temperatures on record are recent, but how does that compare over the long haul? Well, I don't know. I don't know. 1995 Chicago heat wave. The daily low temperatures in Chicago are consistently at their lowest in the mid 70s. But reaching like on July 13th, July 14th. Now we've quit 1980. This is 1995 once more. July 13th, 1995. The low in Chicago is 81. The high is 106. The low on July 14th is 84, 3 degrees higher, up to 102. So no one needs to be told this. Chicago does not look like this. Chicago does not look like a forest in northern Idaho, eastern Washington. It's extraordinarily dense. And when you think about heat index, right, 105 on that concrete jungle, 5 million people, macadam, even on Lakeshore Drive, where you hopefully have Lake Michigan coming in to cool you down, it's going to be extraordinarily hot. And so, if property damage was the theme of the first part of the lecture, may God rest their souls, 739 people died over a period of 5 days in Chicago. 739 people from the heat. Most of the victims, it's a double thing. Obviously, they're elderly and they don't have air conditioning, often both. If you are an elderly person living in a concrete jungle with the heat index up to about 120, 125, where it feels like Furnace Creek, and you do not have air conditioning, that does not bode well for you, certainly. The humidity in Chicago makes a large difference as well. They have something called wet bulb temperatures. A wet bulb temperature of 95 degrees Fahrenheit may be fatal to healthy youngsters, young people, people in their, I don't know, sub 50, especially, of course, people, teenagers, 20s, obviously, but like anyone under 50. Even a healthy young person with a wet bulb temperature of 95 degrees Fahrenheit can suffer potentially fatal side effects from being exposed to this type of temperature. And the wet bulb temperature in Chicago is only 10 degrees below this throughout the city during this time. It's up and it kind of remains at 85 degrees on a very consistent basis throughout this heat wave. Okay. The heat wave eventually moves to the east, moves out of Chicago as the weather is wont to do. 100-degree temperatures in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, temperatures up to 106 in Danbury, Connecticut, which, of course, if you're like, I wonder if the answer is yes, is still today Connecticut's highest recorded temperature ever. Even Ontario reaches a temperature of 37 degrees Celsius or 99 Fahrenheit. But here's the crazy thing. Remember the kind of wet bulb temperature, humidity, heat index. Toronto's 99. When you bring in the density of the air mass, feels like 122. 1995 Chicago heat wave moving east, moving north into Ontario, Canada, feels like 122 degrees. So there's this thing called wet bulb temperatures, where for someone who is healthy and someone who's young, anyone under 50 years old, let's say, can suffer fatal effects if exposed to a wet bulb temperature of 95 degrees for longer than 6 hours. And during the Chicago heat wave, wet bulb temperatures reach 85 degrees Fahrenheit, just 10 below that threshold in many places. The heat wave moves out of Chicago, moves east, as the weather is wont to do. You have, first of all, you have 110-degree Fahrenheit readings on the tarmac at Midway in Chicago, 106 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, 106 in Connecticut, which is still the highest recorded temperature. And then the thing that struck me the most, which is the most interesting, was when this moves east and north into Canada, to Ontario, Toronto. Toronto has a temperature of 99 degrees Fahrenheit, which in itself is exceptional. But when you factor in the humidity and the heat index, that 99 actually registers closer to 122. It feels like 122 degrees Fahrenheit in Toronto. All right. So let's look at some of the Catholic reactions to this thing. So and by to this thing, I mean the phenomenon of heat waves. I'm going to finish with an actual recollection, reflection from a woman who experienced the 1995 Chicago heat wave and wrote about it later. But I'm talking about, remember, disasters. Okay, we covered the disasters. 739 people dead in Chicago, and then in 95, in the 1980 heat wave, property damage today of $70 billion. I would say, 739 deaths, preventable deaths, often because of the air conditioning not being present, mitigating factors not being present, and $70 billion of damage. That's pretty disastrous. I think you'd agree. What is the Catholic reaction to heat wave stuff? Well, National Catholic Reporter, first kind of reaction, has an Earthbeat article. Earthbeat is a subset of their magazine. The article is entitled, quote, "As record heat scorches the globe, climate advocates urge Catholics to take action." Okay. And I say okay because, like, everyone, yeah, like in the article quotes right away Laudato Si, Pope Francis's 2015 exhortation about the environment, right? Written in that kind of love letter to St. Francis. care for the environment, stewardship for Sister Earth, as he called her. By the way, FYI, yeah, Catholics, Christians, it's always not Mother Earth. No, the church is our mother. Our Blessed Mother Mary is our mother. The earth is not our mother, but she's our sister. The earth is our sister. Brother Moon, all of nature, of course. Brother Wolf. Uh, we're supposed to look at nature as kind of, partners, obviously, without worshiping nature. That's probably the problem with all the climate extremist people. Nature has become their religion, right? Climate's become their religion. Now, Jose Aguto tells OSV News, quote, if you want proof of what the significance of the phenomenon is, I would welcome everyone, if they have trust in the scientific evidence of a thermometer, to look at the temperatures that have been charted from at least the 1990s till now and see the increase that has happened. Jose Aguto is this executive director of Catholic Climate Covenant. And he's talking about this in this article, right? As record heat scorches the globe, climate advocates urge Catholics to take action. His reaction is, look, there's this 16th century church, which was almost completely submerged in Mexico in a reservoir since 1966. Now it's exposed because that water level has flown down, right? This is Al Gore, Inconvenient Truth documentary type stuff. Like, look at the receding water levels. The drought and the heat has scorched away the earth. So this guy, Aguto, as head of Catholic Climate Covenant, his reaction is going to be implement some of the stuff Francis has talked about in Laudato Si, about care for the environment, advocate perhaps for more policies that are more climate friendly and less carbon emitting, and reduce your carbon footprint. The reactions in this lecture are kind of duh. I mean, they're kind of what you would think people would say. The more climate inclined Catholics have very little differentiating themselves from climate inclined whoever, people like Greta Thunberg. It's cut down on even like meat consumption, right? We can't have cows emitting all this methane. Cut down on meat, which in itself is a whole nother can of worms I'm not going to get into. But of course, cut down on airline travel, maybe have an electric car, just reduce CO2. The irony is, to have an electric car and the cobalt battery that's powered by that, you need fossil fuels. Stop flying planes. Stop flying planes, you peons. Get off the plane. Wait a second, climate dude, climate celebrity number one. Aren't you on a plane 24/7? I'll just disregard that. So, I mean, like, and by the way, if you're thinking I'm pointing out hypocrisy of celebrities, everyone's a hypocrite. Being a hypocrite is to be human, right? We all, don't practice what we preach. Christ, in the 23rd chapter of Matthew's gospel, denounces the Pharisees, but says, do what they say, not what they do. What they're saying is good. What they're teaching is good. They're just hypocrites. Yeah, all of us are hypocrites, but it's maybe not good if you're like, no more planes, no more planes, no more planes. And then you fly planes 24/7 to the climate conference against planes. It's obviously just perplexing, perhaps, right? The Heat Will Kill You First, Life and Death on a Scorched Planet by Jeff Goodell. People don't understand the risk. They don't understand what to do when it's hot. We have poor messaging about it. There's little infrastructure built specifically for heat where we've not understood the immediate threat the heat poses to us. So this guy, Goodell, is like, read my book, understand the action you have to take. Pope Francis is constantly encouraging people. Here from an article from 2022, quote, the poor suffer the most from heat waves and drought, which is how this whole class started today, talking about 1980. Francis says, exposed to the climate crisis, the poor feel even more gravely the impact of the drought, flooding, hurricanes, and heat waves that are becoming ever more intense and frequent. Listening to these anguished cries, we must repent and modify our lives and destructive systems. So Francis's Catholicism and disaster reaction is a call to repentance, which is always a good Catholic, lens approach. Indeed, praise God. I mean, the scriptures totally right. Repent, turn away from sin. So people, Catholics, Christians, anyone on the environmental movement is often saying like the reaction to this disaster is you modifying your lifestyle. The great controversy is, what does that mean? Do I just move into an apartment and eat bugs and give up all my freedom to a one world government that, just like that guy who said he lived to be 200 years old, is run by aliens, kind of thing? What do we do? Final two reactions. I'm going to read you the whole letter here from Bishop Cantu. Bishop Oscar Cantu, Cantu. He is the Bishop of San Jose, California. This is from August 21, 2020. So very much in the thick of another disaster, right? Very much right in the kind of height of the COVID epidemic. Bishop Cantu, I'm going to read you again. I'm going to verbatim read you from his exhortation about how Catholics should behave in the face of the dual disasters, especially apropos in California, not just heat waves, but fire as well, forest fires. So, Bishop Oscar Cantu. Dear brothers and sisters in Christ, I want you to invite you to join me in prayer for the people of California as we continue to face the effects of the heat wave and the devastating wildfires that have plagued us in recent days. First responders are braving heat and unpredictable firestorms across difficult terrain, often at great personal sacrifice to defend lives and property. Families are being evacuated, even rescued from fires invading their neighborhoods and menacing their homes, often not knowing where it might be safe to go amid the pandemic. Toxic smoke chokes out our air and our lungs. But we are not alone. God is with us. He is our refuge and strength, especially in moments of darkness. His love for us is fiercer than any fire, stronger than any disease, steadier than the unknown. Let us pray he might safeguard our families, neighbors, and the most vulnerable among us. He might guide and protect our firefighters, first responders, and all who work tirelessly to alleviate these disasters. Let us shine the light of his love by helping those who may need food, shelter, or a compassionate ear. Let us never forget that with Jesus Christ, all things are possible. Some of our parishes and schools are near the evacuation zones and are trying to help their affected parishioners. I ask for your prayers for them. Also, as the air quality in our area fluctuates in the coming days, please stay in touch with your local parish for any changes in mass schedules. And he concludes with having now, made his main point, just kind of like be assured yours in Christ. Oscar Cantu, Bishop of San Jose. Okay, a very beautiful letter, kind of, and certainly I don't want to sound like some kind of super postmodern person. Like, all that matters is compassion. People just want to be listened to, just lend an ear. They want to be seen and heard. But that's true in many ways, right? Maybe you can't help someone they just lost their house in a forest fire, but you can be there for them, right? So that's true. That's well said. All right. Michelle Martin. Her article from August 30th, 2023 is entitled Hot Enough? Question mark. So a very recent article, a couple months ago, she reflects back on what we talked about a couple minutes ago, the 1995 Chicago heat wave. I spent a lot of time over the past week talking to my children about the heat wave of 95 as we braced for and then lived through the hottest temperature Chicago has seen in more than a decade. Unlike even my young adult children, I was here in 95, not much older than my oldest is now, working for a suburban newspaper covering the heat, driving home to the city, hoping that we would still have power and thus air conditioning as the demand for power overwhelmed the system. Heat waves, I reminded them, are the deadliest natural disasters. 5 days of temperatures from the mid-90s up to 106 combined with high humidity led to, as I said earlier, now breaking away from Michelle Martin, end quote, now me talking, as we remember, led to 739 deaths, right? Back to Michelle, quote, as the heat built, the Cook County morgue brought in refrigerated trucks to store bodies of those who had died. Months later, the county medical examiner's office said the heat had contributed to 465 deaths just in 6 days, July 14th through the 20th. But then a 1997 study published in the American Journal of Public Health lifts that number to 739. Finally, no more kind of interjections by me, just Michelle Martin, quote, to the end. It made sense, I explained to Teresa, to cancel classes in her unconditioned school on a day the temperature reached 100 degrees and the heat index hit 120. She did not need much convincing after a half day of classes the previous day. The temperature reached 98, heat index 116. The 1995 heat wave was far from the first in Chicago and not even the hottest. Heat waves during the Dust Bowl years, 1930s, generally came with far less humidity. And in those years, people coped by not only opening windows, but by sleeping in parks, on beaches, near the cooler waters of Lake Michigan. While it had been more than 10 years since official temperatures in Chicago reached triple digits, predictions are there will be hotter summers to come. What can we do now? What can we do now? Besides taking measures to fight climate change, we must also make an effort to build community, making it easier to check in on friends and neighbors. That can mean going to your block party, sitting on your front porch, and saying hello to people as they pass, or attending mass at your local parish. Who knows? Maybe someone will even offer you a cool drink. Um, very good. Yes, Michelle Martin. I'm always up for mass as solution to problem, whatever the problem is. Excellent. Great. Uh, well, excuse me. In conclusion, thank you for being with us, and I'm speaking to people in the future. Thank you to all of those who will watch this later on YouTube. Um, yeah, again, like I would never, ever, 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 ever. The video's not broken. I'm just being obnoxious. Ever, 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 ever. I should probably have a glazed over look. I'm gonna try to act it out. Ready? I'm gonna try to glaze over my eyes and act it out to where it looks like the video is frozen. Ready? Ever, 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 ever. I would never consider myself a YouTuber. I hate social media. I hate it. And yet, again, speaking about Christ denouncing the Pharisees, do as they say, not do. I guess don't listen to me. I guess I'm a hypocrite and a liar. I guess I'm a YouTuber. I've been posting all these videos, and a lot of people have been watching them and getting stuff from them. And thank you for that. That's awesome. I'm going to keep doing that. It's awesome. So, really pumped that the people that cannot join us in class can still join us by this way, that's just really freaking sweet. It's awesome. All right. Groshin, I have a question for you, though. You might be thinking, you've only talked about heat. Your class is called Heat and Molasses. You opened this awesome setup. So it just makes me really happy that people are getting something from the channel. Those who cannot join us in person are able to watch it later on. So again, I'll just say, like, I would never consider myself a YouTuber at all. And yet with the great response that's been coming in from people who can't make it, but then watch it later on and enjoy it, that just makes my day. It's awesome. You might say in conclusion, okay, I saw in the opening of this that you had all this kind of like uh molasses and heat, because uh we're not simply talking about the heat waves, but also this molasses flood of 1919. Why? Well, shout out to my son Soren. He was like, we talked about molasses flood in school. Can you talk about it in your class? And I was like, I definitely will do that. That's the kind of immediate reason. But also, it's to broaden the horizon in this Catholicism and disaster. I don't know if you can even conjugate definition to definitionary, but I'm going to broaden the horizon of the definitionary scope of Catholicism and disasters, and say, look, like, it's not just tornadoes and hurricanes, now heat and nuclear bombs. It's just even accidents. The molasses flood of 1919 happens January 15th, 1919, in the North End neighborhood of Boston. A large storage tank filled with 2.3 million gallons of molasses. A large storage tank filled with 2.3 million gallons of molasses explodes. It rushes through the street at an estimated 35 miles per hour, killing 21 people, injuring 150. The event is still, just like legendary in Boston. People in Boston said the North End and that kind of area that underwent this deluge, again, 2.3 million gallons of molasses bursting out into a river of molasses moving at 35 miles an hour. People say that for decades afterwards, once more, this happens World War I, Spanish flu time, January 1919, that for decades the area smelled like molasses. That is a positive. Molasses smells awesome. If I didn't call my history offering on this channel maple syrup history, I'd be honored to call it molasses history. With the same kind of idea that molasses, the thickness, the viscosity is like lots of good historical facts. Listen to this report, okay? Quote, molasses waist deep covered the street and swirled and bubbled about the wreckage. Here and there struggled to form. Whether it was an animal or human being was impossible to tell. Only an upheaval, a thrashing about in the sticky mess showed where any life was. Horses died like so many flies on sticky paper. The more they struggled, the deeper in the mess they were ensnared. Human beings, men and women, suffered likewise. And finally, there's two final quotes. Edward Park writes of a child's experience for the Smithsonian in 1983, thusly. Antonio D'Estasio, walking homeward with his sisters from the Michelangelo School, was picked up by the wave and carried, tumbling on its crest almost as though he were surfing. Then he grounded, and the molasses rolled him like a pebble as the wave diminished. He heard his mother call his name and couldn't answer. His throat was so clogged with the smothering goo. He passed out, then opened his eyes to find 3 of his 4 sisters staring at him. Finally, there's a small plaque, and I'm going to end the class on this, that commemorates this event. It was placed there by the Bostonian Society at the entrance of Pupolo Park. Quote, the plaque is entitled Boston Molasses Flood. On January 15th, 1919, a molasses tank at 529 Commercial Street exploded under pressure, killing 21 people. A 40-foot wave of molasses buckled the elevated railroad tracks, crushed buildings, and inundated the neighborhood. Structural defects in the tank combined with unseasonably warm temperatures contributed to the disaster. So I'll make a final note. Compare and contrast 2 disasters. 2 disasters from January. One from 1919, the molasses flood. There, the temperature's too warm. January 1919 molasses flood, temperature's too warm. That causes the tank to rupture, the flood. January 1986, Challenger, the temperatures are too cold. The mission should have been canceled. The O-rings don't seal. The space shuttle explodes. And what is the kind of connection between those two things? Nothing, obviously, other than disaster is all around us. However, as St. Paul says, right, wherever sin abounds, grace all the more. And, oh, happy fault that merited for us such a, glorious Redeemer. When things are bad, often not in spite of, but because of the bad, sad things, even greater things come. See you later.